So when I get super passionate about something, I tend to go a little overboard in ingesting all of the information I can find about whatever hobby or topic or TV show or fandom that I'm like really super excited about. And then I saturate myself in whatever that is, and people start to question my sanity. Hi guys, it's April, and this is another one of my 3 reads book mini review section things. I will someday come up with a good title for whatever this is, but that is what we're sticking with for now. And I know some of you guys know that I have been getting into gardening this whole past year because of everything going on in the world. And I've already done a video talking about 3 gardening books that I had recently picked up and really enjoyed. This is a continuation of that. This is more advanced gardening reading, if that makes any kind of sense, because there's the entry level where you start to get to know everything about soil and watering and pruning and caring for and all that kind of stuff. And then there is some of the things that go so in depth because somebody is super passionate about a specific part of gardening, or they're really passionate about the science behind gardening and how you should plant things out, or you just have historical references that are just really fascinating to read because you start to realize that what we're doing now is some of the stuff that people were looking at back then. So these are 3 more gardening reads that are a little bit more advanced after all of the entry level stuff. I'm just going to start talking about these reads because I think I've over-explained this way too much. The first book I want to talk about is Epic Tomatoes by Greg LeHoullier. I think that's how you say his last name. This is all about tomatoes. I absolutely love tomatoes. I love salsas. I love paste. I love fresh tomatoes. I like tomato sandwiches. So I have a ton of tomatoes that I want to be growing this year, and this book just goes into depth and looks at the history of the tomato and how tomatoes became a staple for a lot of growers. It also looks at various different breeds of tomatoes and classes of tomatoes and varieties of tomatoes, and helps you kind of look into specific tomatoes that you may want to grow for certain kinds of reasons. There were points where I know he is very attached to his heirloom tomatoes, and I get it. I sort of felt like there was a little bit of an agenda with all of that, but this guy really loves the history of a tomato, so that explains why there's such an attachment to heirloom tomatoes. I like all tomatoes. So that's the only kind of thing I had against this book a little bit, but otherwise it has some really, really gorgeous photos. The layout is wonderful, and I loved hearing about the history of the tomato. It's relatively new in comparison to a lot of other fruits and a lot of other vegetables, which surprised me a lot, especially when you realize the origin of the tomato and then how it just kind of flew across to Europe, and then when it was trying to come back, it was just met with all kinds of resistance, which surprises me just a little bit. But if you like tomatoes, I highly recommend this read. The next book I want to talk about is Plant Partners by Jessica Walliser. This is more of a scientific look on why you should probably diversify your garden, how having certain plants together or using other kinds of plants to either bring pollinators in or keep certain kind of pests out is a good idea, and how scientifically all of that comes together and what all of that means. The end goal of this book pretty much is diversify. Don't plant all of the same thing all in the same area. You want to get some intermingling so that you're making more of a natural habitat. So you are attracting the right kind of critters and you're repelling the wrong kind. And I just find the science behind all of this really, really fascinating because I do live in this world for my working life. And so seeing some of that laid out here, I approved. It is a little bit more of a drier read if you're not really into science, but it does have a lot of good recommendations on what you could be planting for specific kinds of things, and I like that. And last but not least, it's not necessarily a gardening book, but it is a gardening book, and that is just Thomas Jefferson's garden book. This is pretty much just his gardening diary, his gardening journal, as he went through planting up his own landscape, his own garden, and learning things about the planting cycle and specific plants and things that he loved, and just notes that he made over the whole growing process. And Thomas Jefferson was just one of those people who liked to have his hands in so many different things and loved to study and learn from and just develop different ideas. And so this takes a look at from his early life all the way to the end of how his garden grew. He has specific notes in each of these where you have it by year, and he took little jotted notes in his garden book in which when he planted things, when things grew, when they harvested things. But then the researchers also pulled in facts that were going on in his life and interwove them so you kind of understood where he was at and why he was making these specific kinds of notes. I like it. I like history. I loved the fact that a lot of what Jefferson is taking notes of in this gardening book are things that I'm kind of starting to do on my own. Maybe not quite like Jefferson, but it is a historical reference to go back to and just see how the garden has changed from year to year and making note of what worked and what didn't work. And I find it so fascinating. I don't know. It's just cool. It's a thing. So those are 3 more recent gardening books that I picked up. Those will probably be the last for the year because it is about to be planting time and I'm super excited about it. I don't know if this is going to work. Who knows? But what happens, happens. It will be a learning experience no matter what. Tell me down below what some of your recommended reads are. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe down below, hit that bell. Do all those things to get all of those notifications, and I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.